First big news out of the UK overnight, besieged PM Rishi Sunak calling a snap and early election for the 4th of July. Now, I've been around campaigns, this one from the Conservatives, I have to tell you, off to a horrid start. Look at this, they can't even get the bloke an umbrella.
This is proof that the plan and priorities I set out are working. I recognise that it has not always been easy. Some of you will only just be starting to feel the benefits, and for some, it might still be hard when you look at your bank balance.
Now, it's worth noting that faint music you can hear in the background was the song Things Can Only Get Better, which of course was the big anthem of Tony Blair's campaign. So rather than being surrounded by Conservative supporters, Sunak had the faint hum of a Labor-adopted tune. Now, for his part, Keir Starmer, he wants to make clear that Labor Party has left behind the Jeremy Corbyn years and is now a party that mainstream voters can support.
Over the course of the last 4 years, we've changed the Labour Party, returned it once more to the service of working people. All we ask now, humbly, is to do exactly the same for our country and return Britain to the service of working people.
Joining me now live from London for their take on a bit of a messy start to the campaign, Spiked online editor Tom Slater and former Victorian MP now based in the UK, Tim Smith. Well, welcome, gentlemen. Tom, I'm going to start with you. Just the optics of this shock announcement from Sunak. I mean, they've got 6 months to run on their term. It's always a bit wobbly when a government goes early. They've gone early, but geez Louise, they didn't sort of set it up as well as they should have. I mean, they've just finished spending, I'm told, millions of dollars on this new comms centre at Downing Street. Why on earth didn't they use it when they knew it was going to be so wet?
It's incredible. I mean, that launch couldn't have gone any worse for the Tories if Keir Starmer had scripted it himself. The fact that it was held out in the torrential rain, the fact that there wasn't even anyone offering an umbrella, and also the fact that, as you suggest, they have spent an awful lot of money on this very swish kind of US-style briefing room inside number 10 Downing Street, and yet they decided to leave it alone for that particular day. And I think this kind of sums up a lot of what has happened between Starmer and Sunak in recent years, is the fact that they've made it very easy for Starmer. In this case, all he had to do was stand in the dry and look relatively presentable, and he already felt like he was at a better start of the campaign. But another example of the Tories giving Labour an open goal, I think, at the beginning of this campaign.
Yeah, because the one thing the Tories control is the timing of the election. They are the incumbents. I said at the top of the show, it's exactly like it is in Australia, but they've just basically thrown away that trump card. They've made themselves a mockery. They didn't need to go early. I'm told by contacts over there that there was a worry about the 1922 committee, that they had the numbers to roll Sunak. How real do you think that rumour is?
I think it could easily be the case. The party is very sort of restive. It's either restive or resigned. Those are kind of the two camps that you notice. I think the other thing they were concerned about is that there have been a number now of high-profile defections, direct Tory to Labour, not necessarily always high-profile individuals, but certainly big news stories. And it seems like, going from the reporting this morning, that there was a concern that essentially they would appear to be clinging on, kind of Gordon Brown style, to the number 10 Downing Street. And also a kind of sense that whilst for many months there was a hope that just the political weather might change, that the economy might actually start to be better in a way that's actually felt by ordinary citizens, but they came to the conclusion that things could quite easily get worse. And I, like you, question the wisdom of going this early. I think a lot of his cabinet do as well. But at the same time, it's a tricky situation where it wasn't clear what their strategy was to really turn it around. This has only ever really been about stemming the losses.
The polls have got Labor, in some of the polls at least, with a 20-point lead. Now, that's massive. But I was looking around at some stats today. Labor will need a 12.7% swing to get a majority. Now, to put that in perspective, that is bigger than Blair got in 97. And Starmer is no Blair, right? Is not Blair. So can he get there with a majority? Let's assume he gets there, but can he get there with a majority, or will he get there and be in minority?
I think that's very much an open question, because you're absolutely right. Not only do the average kind of 20-point leads mask the significant hurdle they need to overcome to actually get into majority territory, it's also a lead that is clearly very soft. No one is enthusiastic for Keir Starmer outside of Westminster, effectively. He's someone who the country, when you look at polls and surveys, they don't really know what he stands for. There's a sense that the Tories have had their day and that they need to be turfed out, but no one is enthusiastic for the Labour offer. And also, I think most crucially, because of the fact that the last election was very much decided by many former Labour voters going over to Conservatives, those voters are not really going back in the other direction. Voters are moving out the Conservative column, but they're going primarily to don't know, some to Reform, and a slither essentially to Labour. So I think the chances of this being more like a minority government or a hung parliament are much more likely than we've seen. But that being said, it does feel like everything's to play for at this point.
Yeah, look, it's a long campaign, 6 weeks, anything could happen. Hey, Starmer said in his pitch that the party of Jeremy Corbyn is long gone. He's purged the anti-Semitism of Corbyn. But those election council results, only a matter of weeks ago, Labor lost votes to a lot of pro-Palestinian candidates. George Galloway's influence obviously is there. We've got all those pro-Palestinian rallies that we're seeing here in Australia on the streets of London. How's this all going to play out?
I think this is something which is going to potentially bite Keir Starmer in particular constituencies. Is it going to affect him in the overall electoral map? Probably not to the same extent. But I think here's a reminder that whilst he might have got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, who's going to be standing as an independent in this election, and whilst he might have cleared out a few kind of Labour councillors, there was a broader problem with a kind of Israelophobia to anti-Semitism within sections of his coalition, which they have been ignoring. And it's been quite shocking, actually, in recent days, seeing Labour Party figures backing the ICC's ridiculous arrest warrants against the Israeli government. And it's quite clear that they're trying to sort of triangulate on the issue of Israel, whilst trying to make clear that they have no room for anti-Semitism. But as we all know, those two things are intimately bound up these days. So I don't think it's something that could cost him in the broad picture electorally, but certainly in a few seats, and certainly will be an ongoing challenge for him in terms of holding his coalition together.
I think it'll also be a distraction for him. I mean, these sorts of things, if there's an outspoken comment coming into the media frame on any given day, I mean, it just derails campaigns. He's then on the defensive. He's not talking to sort of middle Britain anymore. He's out on the fringes, and that's what he wants to try and avoid. Talk to me about Nigel Farage's Reform Party. I know also there's the spectre of Boris Johnson and his Tory influence, and I guess the ramifications of where the wall goes. Let's assume the red wall he delivered at his last election falls. Again, is it going to go to Labor? Is it going to go somewhere else? But let's start with Farage.
Yes, absolutely. I think he could be incredibly decisive if he decides to jump back into frontline politics. So he is nominally the kind of chairman, the kind of honorary figurehead of the Reform Party, but he's not really involved in the front line. Their leader, Richard Tice, is a lot lower profile. That being said, they did pretty well in the local elections recently. They pushed the Tories into third place in a lot of local council elections, as well as coming a very close third in the Blackpool South by-election. But I think the X factor, the missing ingredient here, is Farage himself, because try as they might, the Reform Party, since Farage kind of stepped back to go more into media, to go more into those kinds of ventures, they have struggled to find that kind of communicator, that kind of person who has that element of the common touch that he certainly does have. And I think with it, they could be incredibly decisive. Without it, they're still going to do a lot of damage to the Tories, though.
We have a saying in Australia, you're gone when you can sense that the voter's got the baseball bat on the front porch waiting for you, just can't wait to get rid of you. And in Australia, at least, they do not like being sent to the polls early. You have 5-year terms. I think it's a little bit different over there. We have 3-year terms, so when you have to go back early, it's pretty bloody early. What's the mood of the population now that there has been an early election called? Are they thankful that now they can get rid of a bad government, or are they cranky they're being sent to the polls? Or you said there's no enthusiasm really out there for Labor. What's the mood like?
I think it's very damp. And not just literally in terms of Sunak's press conference last night. It's been quite rainy here recently. It's just the fact that there's a sense that quite understandably, not much is really up for grabs. People are really frustrated with the Conservatives, particularly those who took a chance on them in 2019 who had never voted for them before. But no one's enthusiastic for Starmer. And also, no one really thinks there's much difference between these two parties at this point. It does feel like we've gone back to the kind of factory reset setting of British politics as it was up until Brexit, which is that you have two parties who are more or less dancing on the head of a pin, not really any big debates in society, or at least ones that they're not taking particularly strong positions on. And I think we saw that reflected in the local and recent by-elections, where you had, whilst there are supposedly historic swings towards Labour, that was in the context of quite historic low turnout as well. So I think the public is generally demoralised. I think they're up for giving the Conservatives a kicking, but not much beyond that, it feels like.
We're going to watch it all very closely here from Australia and on The Credlin Show. Tom Slater, thanks for your time.